Black magic or witchcraft is the use of supernatural powers for evil purposes. It can be used to destroy someone physically, mentally, and financially. Some ways of doing that involve using the victim's clothing, hair, personal items, or even scarier. Sometimes it can be done just by looking them straight in the eye. Practicing black magic has been around for centuries, and today we have 3 real stories that will make your skin crawl. Thank you for watching Craving Fear. We need your support to continue delivering stories and improve. If you haven't yet, like this video and subscribe for more content. I still remember the day I got the news about the inheritance. My childhood friend, Kwame, had just inherited a large sum of money from his family in Ghana. His family was very well off, but this inheritance meant a lot more to him than just financial security. It was supposed to be a blessing, but it quickly turned into a nightmare. Kwame was always kind-hearted and generous. He shared his good fortune with everyone he knew, including his relatives. But, as it happens sometimes, not everyone was happy for him. Some of his relatives became incredibly jealous of his good luck. They didn't just wish him bad luck. They wanted him gone. At first, Kwame didn't notice anything strange. But soon he started feeling unwell. It began with headaches that seemed to come out of nowhere. He would get dizzy and tired, no matter how much he slept. His face became pale, and dark circles appeared under his eyes. I could see he was struggling, but his doctor couldn't find anything wrong. All the tests came back normal, and Kwame was told it was probably just stress. One day, as he was walking down the street, something really unsettling happened. Kwame saw an old woman on the sidewalk. She looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. As he passed by, she stopped him and said, "You're cursed. Someone has done voodoo on you." Kwame laughed it off. He thought it was just an old woman trying to scare him. She warned him to come back if he ever felt like he couldn't breathe. Kwame dismissed her words as nonsense, but deep down, he felt a shiver run down his spine. A few days later, something terrifying happened while Kwame was asleep. He was lying in bed, exhausted from the constant fatigue and pain. In the middle of the night, he felt a heavy weight pressing down on his chest. It was so intense that it felt like someone was sitting beside him. He tried to move, but he couldn't. It was as if invisible chains were holding him down. Panic set in as he struggled to breathe, and he could hear a deep, heavy breath in the dark room. The fear was overwhelming. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out. All he could do was lie there, paralyzed and terrified, feeling the oppressive presence of something nasty in the room. Desperate for answers, Kwame remembered the old woman's warning. With a mixture of fear and hope, he went to find her. She welcomed him into her small, dimly lit home. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, and the atmosphere was eerie. She began performing rituals with chanting and holy water. Both fascinated and frightened, Kwame watched as she moved with purpose and intensity. The old woman's rituals seemed to take forever. She chanted strange words and sprinkled holy water around the room. Each time she did, the oppressive feeling in the room seemed to lift slightly. Kwame could almost feel the dark presence retreating, but it wasn't completely gone. The old woman reassured him, telling him it would take a few sessions to fully remove the curse. After several visits, the headaches and fatigue began to fade. Kwame started feeling better, and his dark circles disappeared. He was no longer overwhelmed by the heavy, suffocating feeling that had haunted him. It was as if a dark cloud had been lifted from his life, but the experience left him shaken. He couldn't forget the sensation of being paralyzed and unable to breathe. Even now, thinking about it gives me chills. Kwame and I both know that there are things in this world that we can't always explain. The old woman's help saved him, but he's forever changed by what he went through. My world shattered the day the police knocked on my door. Their words were like icy daggers piercing my heart. Mum was thrown through the windshield and impaled on a cruel metal pole. Dad crushed like a tin can inside the car. A horrific scene painted in my mind, a nightmare I couldn't wake from. The funeral was a blur of blackened tears. Then that distant relative, appeared, a vulture drawn to a carcass. Her eyes, cold and calculating, drilled into me as she circled, asking morbid questions about the accident, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. I shrank away, a wounded animal wanting to disappear. Alone in my parents' house, a ghost in my own family home, I started to sort through their belongings. Dust bunnies danced in forgotten corners as I moved furniture, a way to fill the echoing silence. Behind a heavy cabinet, something caught my eye. 2 dolls, crudely made, their eyes empty sockets staring into nothingness. A chill ran down my spine. Mom's doll had a metal spike piercing its chest, mirroring the image that burned into my brain. Dad's doll was twisted and broken, its limbs contorted like a crushed body. A scream lodged in my throat as I realized the terrible truth. I remembered the news reports, a car accident, a tragic twist of fate. But now, looking at those sinister dolls, I saw a different story, a story of hatred, of a twisted mind seeking revenge. Fear gnawed at me as I dug deeper. I found old photos of Mom and Dad smiling, unaware of the darkness closing in on them. And then I saw her, that relative, standing beside them, a forced smile plastered on her face. A wave of nausea washed over me. She had visited them just days before the accident, a venomous spider injecting her deadly poison. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, a horrifying mosaic of betrayal and murder. I felt a cold dread creeping into my heart. Was she watching me now? A predator circling its prey? The house, once a sanctuary, became a haunted prison. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow dancing in the corners, sent shivers down my spine. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Nightmares replaced dreams, filled with images of mangled bodies and that woman's cold, calculating eyes. I was trapped in a living hell, a prisoner in my own mind. Days turned into weeks, and the fear didn't subside. The truth was a monster lurking in the shadows, and I was its next target. I knew I had to confront her, to expose her evil. But how? The weight of the world rested on my shoulders. I was no longer just a son grieving his parents. Every day the fear grew stronger, a constant companion in my life. I was losing the battle against the darkness, slipping into a world of paranoia and fear. The line between sanity and madness was blurring, and I was teetering on the edge. I was a survivor, but at what cost? The future was a void, filled with uncertainty and dread. I was a ghost in my own life, haunted by the past and terrified of the future. Would I ever find peace? Or was this darkness destined to consume me whole? Only time will tell. Living next to a crazy neighbor can be more than just annoying. It can be terrifying. My neighbor, Mrs. Blake, was the kind of person who never seemed to have a good day. Her house was always a mess, and she had this unsettling habit of showing up at my door, asking me to help her with household chores. I tried to avoid her as much as possible. I mean, who wants to deal with that kind of hassle? One day she stopped me in the hallway, her eyes wide and intense. "Come help me," she demanded. I refused, saying I was too busy. Her face twisted into a strange, unsettling grin. As I walked away, I heard her mumble, "You'll be sorry." That's when the weirdness started. At first it was small stuff, objects appearing on my doorstep, a dead mouse, a pile of hair, a razor blade. I tried to ignore it, but the sense of dread grew stronger. Soon, my life began to unravel. Work became a mess. I made mistakes that had never happened before, and I started getting into accidents. One day, I narrowly escaped being hit by a bus. My heart raced as I stumbled back to the sidewalk, feeling as if some unseen force was watching me. My body became a canvas of bruises, and I couldn't figure out where they were coming from. Each day, I'd wake up with new marks, dark and painful, and no clue how they got there. I began to feel like I was living in a nightmare. One night, I came home from work exhausted and beaten down. As I approached my front door, I saw Mrs. Blake standing across the street. She was staring at me with that unnerving grin on her face. It was a grin that stretched too wide, making my skin crawl. Feeling desperate, I decided to confront her. I walked over and, trying to sound calm, I apologized for our argument. "I'm sorry about before," I said. "My life's been falling apart. I'll help you with your chores if that improves things." Her smile widened in a way that made my heart pound. "Things will get better," she said softly. The way she said it sent shivers down my spine. There was something off about her promise, something that didn't sit right. The next day was astonishing. I woke up, and the bruises on my body had vanished. Work went smoothly, and for the first time in weeks, everything seemed to fall into place. My bad luck appeared to be over. But the sudden change was so drastic that I couldn't help but suspect Mrs. Blake had something to do with it. I began to wonder if her strange behavior and that eerie grin were more than just madness. I couldn't prove anything, but the pattern was undeniable. Every time I refused to help her, things went horribly wrong. The moment I agreed, my life turned back to normal. The fear that she had some kind of dark power over me was overwhelming. Even though things seemed to be going well, the memory of those terrifying weeks and Mrs. Blake's unsettling presence left me constantly on edge. I couldn't shake the feeling that she had some sinister influence, and the idea of her watching me, waiting for the next time I'd refuse her, haunted my every moment. I kept my distance from her as best as I could. I was always on guard, waiting for the next sign of trouble. I didn't want to tempt fate again, not when I knew how quickly my life could spiral back into chaos. The horrors I experienced were a chilling reminder of how dark and mysterious some people can be, and how quickly a seemingly small decision can turn into a nightmare. In the end, I learned to tread carefully around Mrs. Blake. Her twisted smile and strange promises were a constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind even the most ordinary facades. Even though things were calm now, the shadows of those terrifying days never fully disappeared, lurking just beyond the edges of my everyday life. Hope you like these stories. Which one did you like the most? Tell us in the comments below. If you have interesting stories, send them in an email at the address listed in the video description. We'd love to hear them, and I'll make it into a video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.